You know, we can't really talk about Africa without talking about the role of women, particularly in agriculture.
In everything.
In everything. And to what extent do you see that women are getting greater recognition for the critical role they play in terms of economic development? I mean, we recently saw the president of Liberia receive the Nobel Peace Prize. And that's, of course, very symbolic, but what more should or can be done, whether via the United States or other donors or in Africa itself, to really empower women, whether through education, greater access to loans, economic assistance, to take their rightful place and really make a difference, even a bigger difference on the continent?
You know, I think there's a growing consensus that this is the key to Africa's development. Last year at the AfriCare Gala, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf said, "Women are the future of Africa." I think there's recognition that it's perhaps the best investment you can make in development, focusing on women. And there are a couple of things in particular that I think are critical in this, which is, in addition to what you described, is building leadership, leadership with women. Investing in girls' secondary education is such a powerful investment because it affects the ability of young girls to be able to do a much better job in their communities, providing leadership roles in improving the health and welfare of their families. So important to the decision around fertility. So it's a very important investment that needs to be made in Africa. In our work at AfriCare, we put a very sharp focus on women in development because it's the key to development. In our work in agriculture, for example, we do a lot of work to mobilize women farmers. The majority of farmers in Africa, small farmers, are women, and to be sure that they can assume leadership positions in agricultural cooperatives, that they are in a position to get access to finance, in addition to access to production methods that can make them much more efficient, competitive farmers.
Do you see any cultural impediments in the continent that could somehow undermine these efforts, or?
Oh, absolutely. Attitudes of men
You said
is an obstacle. But I would tell you, we do some very interesting work in focusing on men and their responsibilities. You know, I'll give you just two quick examples if I could. One is in Nigeria, where we had an HIV/AIDS project. And what we did, I thought, was a very interesting approach of mobilizing men to be community health workers, to go out and talk to men about their attitudes, to understand their role in HIV/AIDS. Very powerful in getting men to talk to one another, to get men to talk about male circumcision, which is a very tough issue to talk about, but so important in the transmission of HIV/AIDS. The other project was really focused on women, but it had such an important effect on the men. We had an agriculture project in Mali, and it helped women go from cultivating crops on the side to substantially increasing their incomes through higher productivity agriculture, rice in particular. And it substantially increased their incomes. Men initially were very nervous about this. You know, these women were becoming so successful in this. But I think they saw the impact it was having by going from $1 a day to $4 a day. It may not sound like a lot here in the United States, but it's transformative. When you make that leap, it means the diet changes, children can go to school, children get access to health care, and so do the men. The entire household is better off.
Darius Mans, one quick question before we have to close. How about South Sudan, the new country of South Sudan? Are you planning to be? Are you currently active in the country? And also, what are your thoughts about the future of this new country? Because there are so many unresolved problems between South Sudan and, of course, Sudan. Unresolved issues regarding oil revenues. There are boundaries, borders that have yet to be properly delineated. Are you optimistic that the country can, surmount these many challenges to its existence?
We worked in Southern Sudan for years. We're not currently there, but would very much like to re-engage there because the opportunities for development, I think, are enormous. There are those challenges that you mentioned, but that country is so rich in not just mineral resources, but the agricultural potential of Southern Sudan is extraordinary. The thing that's interesting to me is, I know there's a lot of focus and concern, rightly so, in South Sudan, but the relationship with Sudan now changes fundamentally. And it's very important that South Sudan, as I know they are very focused, takes advantage of this new relationship that they have to ensure that it leads to development opportunities for South Sudan.
Well, Darius Mans, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on Press Conference USA. It was a delight to have you, and there's a lot more to talk about, so we hope we'll have you back in the very near future.
Good. Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Henok. Carol, thank you.
Darius Mans is the president of AfriCare. Press Conference USA on the Voice of America was produced in Washington. Thanks to Anna Zalewski for booking our guest. Our engineers were Gary Jaffe, Ted Schneider, and Justin Thwaites. And joining me on the program was Henok Fente. He's a broadcaster in VOA's Horn of Africa service. And I'm Carol Castiel. Do join me again next week for another Press Conference USA on the Voice of America.